Hello, everybody, and welcome to our NFMC Program Supplemental Grants Eligible Applicant Briefing. This is a presentation for eligible HUD-approved intermediaries, state housing finance agencies, and NeighborWorks network organizations. My name is Nicole Harmon. I am Vice President of Foreclosure Mitigation here at NeighborWorks America. I am joined here in our Washington, D.C. office by NFMC staff. My co-presentation facilitator for today is Strike Thomas. As we go through the briefing today, what we're going to do is put all participants on mute, and I'll turn this over to Strike to sort of explain the housekeeping rules.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. As a bit of housekeeping, we have the lines muted to make sure we have a nice, clean, quiet line since we don't have any secondary speakers. But we are going to employ the chat function in Zoom. So you should be able to see as part of your Zoom viewer for looking at the presentation today, a button for chat, and that should open up a new window. And if you have any questions as we go through the presentation, please add them in there. And we will, towards the end of the presentation, we'll have a question and answer period where we'll go back and look at all the questions that have accumulated and answer them one by one systematically. Having them in writing there, that way helps us really compile and answer the questions systematically. When you use the chat function for that, please make sure that you're sending the chat question to everyone and not just all panelists. The reason for this is so that everyone, all your fellow participants, can see your question in case they have the same question. So rather than ask it the second time, they can see you've already asked the same question, and we'll get to the answer for everyone. Thank you very much for your cooperation with that.
Yes. So we do have a lot of content to go over and run through today. It may take us about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And that's aside from any Q&A that you may have. So because there are no sort of breaking points throughout the presentation, we're holding the Q&A to the end. Again, please, as questions come up, go ahead and submit them through the chat box, directing them to everyone and not just the panelists so that we can continue a log. Before I get started, I just want to ask if there are brand new applicants seeking NFMC funding for the first time that are on the call today, would you go ahead now and please send in just your name and your organization name so that we can keep a record on our end. Only new applicants applying for NFMC funds for the first time, we'd like to recognize you. So if you could let us know who you are through the chat box at this time, we'd appreciate it. Okay. So while that is going on, why don't we go ahead and get started, and we'll share with you the agenda for today. I will note that this presentation is being recorded. A recording of today's eligible applicant briefing will be posted on our NFMC Supplemental Grants webpage, and that's at neighborworks.org/NFMC. There is a side link for supplemental grants. So you can play back this presentation at any time, and the PowerPoint will be made available there as well. So let's go over the agenda. So the topics we'll cover today are the funds available, we'll discuss the program design, we'll discuss scoring and award decisions. Once we hit this section, I'll dive into a review of the application questions, or I should say the applications and the content within them. We'll discuss notable changes, the timeline for supplemental grant funds, where you can find resource materials, as well as any questions that you have through the remainder of this eligible applicants briefing. That will be our designated Q&A time. All right, so let's get started. So NeighborWorks announced as part of its January 11th, 2016 Round 10 and Supplemental Grants funding announcement, our intended framework to make available under that announcement supplemental grants to eligible applicants as a result of recaptured or underutilized NFMC program funding, which would have been made available from previous grant rounds. It is our intent moving forward through the supplemental grant competition is to execute that stated framework for fiscal year 2017. So as of today, almost all full year fiscal year 2017 appropriations bills have not become law, and the majority of the government is operating under a short-term continuing resolution through December 9th. At this time, it is uncertain as to whether the NFMC program will receive an appropriation in FY17. However, based on the stated framework that I just mentioned, our intent is to make available funds that we have on hand that remain unobligated, that have either been a result of recaptures from prior grant rounds, the obligations from prior grant rounds, and or rolled over funds from the course of prior grant rounds. There may be additional supplemental grants in the future in FY17 where applicants who apply through this competition are eligible to receive additional supplemental grants should A, funding be made in a future appropriation, and I'll talk about that in a second, or B, funding through other sources or other mechanisms such as donations or the like. Now, should a full year continuing resolution be passed, in which case the NFMC program would be funded in FY17 at FY16 levels, or $40 million. Again, it's uncertain at this time because we're under a short-term CR if NFMC will be funded again and written into law. So therefore, NeighborWorks is going to make available the funding that we have on hand that remains unobligated, and to date we have roughly $1.7 million to award out to eligible grant applicants under this competition. As stated in the governing funding announcement for supplemental grant funds, which we announced during the round 10 competition, we stated that for supplemental grants, the performance period start date for NFMC grants will be determined at the date of the award, but shall not have a term longer or greater than 12 calendar months. Priority will be given to successful applicants based on program priorities and factors that include but are not limited to demonstrated grant spend down, service delivery to areas of need or specific areas of need, and an applicant's or grantee's compliance standing. Now I'm going to touch on what happens should there be additional funding later in the 2017 fiscal year. Should additional funds become available throughout the fiscal year, grantees deemed eligible through this competition will be notified of the opportunity to receive additional supplemental grants. If additional funds become available, grantees awarded through this competition may be notified based on their spend down ability and or if they've exhausted their current supplemental grant. Now, for applicants that are not awarded under this initial competition for supplemental grants, due solely to the circumstances of our limited grant pool, we will elect to place those eligible applicants on a eligible grantee list. Applicants in this situation will be notified at the time of grant awards if they qualify for this eligible grantee list, although they may not have been awarded an initial supplemental grant. We'll announce all directives pertaining to subsequent supplemental grant opportunities. We'll announce those through NFMC at nw.org, our centralized email account. All subsequent supplemental grant funding will be prioritized based on factors that I went over previously, which includes, but not limited to, an applicant's demonstrated grant spend down, service delivery areas of need, 2 areas of need, and compliance standing. So to start, applications for supplemental grants competition will be available today, October 12th, and they are due by 5 p.m. Eastern on November 9th, which is the day after Election Day. So please note this day and this time, and this is East Coast Standard Time. We always recommend that you submit your application much earlier than the deadline in case there are technical glitches or you need assistance from NeighborWorks help desk staff. Please do not wait until the last minute. If you are approaching the 4 o'clock hour on November 9th, your likelihood of being able to submit an application by 5 o'clock becomes very slim, particularly if there's errors and the like that you must clear before submission. So please target a day before the 9th and make sure that your application is into us as early as possible. As I stated previously, the governing body for supplemental grants, that funding announcement was released in January of 2016 with our round 10 competition. So within that funding announcement is sort of the master requirements for supplemental grants, and what we have posted is an addendum to that funding announcement for supplemental grants. So within that announcement, we indicated that organizations or applicants that are interested in applying for supplemental grants must submit to NeighborWorks an expression of interest letter. This expression of interest letter is posted on our website now. It's also posted in the addendum for supplemental grant funds that is also included on our website. So if you've not yet submitted your expression of interest letter, I would say, well, you're on the phone with me now. If you pull up another tab, download this expression of interest letter. It's really short, sweet. You could fill it out in less than 5 minutes. Shoot it over to nfmc@nw.org so we can get you accounted for. This letter is due to us by November 1st. 2016. All grantees that receive additional supplemental grants must align all other requirements, as I mentioned, from the round 10 funding announcement, which included sort of the framework for supplemental grants. The requirements moving forward for supplemental grants must align from the directives that are posted there, as well as in the addendum. Right, and I'll turn it over to Strike Thomas to dive into the funds available and the funding guideline.
Great, thank you very much, Nicole. So the statutory authority for the NFMC program mandates that the majority, at least 51%, of awarded funds be prioritized for use in areas of greatest need. We will continue to prioritize counseling funds geared to help homeowners in areas of greatest need, with an emphasis on areas of extraordinary need once again. There will be limits on how much each applicant may request that are similar to previous application opportunities. These limits are still high just in case the full year continuing resolution occurs and we wind up with a larger amount of funds to distribute. No one applicant can request a total award of more than $5 million, and no one applicant can request a total award of less than $50,000. As a reminder, the performance period may vary depending on total demand and dollar amount of available funding. A performance period will run from the date of award announcements up to no more than 12 months. Applicants should only apply for the amount of funding that they believe they'll have the capacity to manage or spend down by September 30th, 2017. So let's get into who is eligible and the requirements for eligibility. The eligibility criteria are the same as previous application processes. November 9th, 2016, as a reminder, is the application due date. So who is eligible? First are HUD-approved regional and national housing counseling intermediaries, as approved by 5 p.m. Eastern Time on November 9th, 2016. Second are state housing finance agencies. Third are chartered members of the NeighborWorks network as of 5 o'clock Eastern Time on November 9th, 2016. For a list of these organizations, please, you can go to our NFMC webpage on the NeighborWorks website, and you can find links that will list to the current list of HUD-approved intermediaries, the state-approved housing finance agencies, as well as a link to a directory where you can search by chartered members of the NeighborWorks network. If you have any questions about these organizations and who exactly is included. So also, all eligible applicants must demonstrate relevant experience. This is defined by applicants must certify that it and any subgrantee, branches, affiliates, or contracted counseling entities that will receive funding have A, worked successfully with financial institutions and with borrowers facing default, delinquency, and foreclosure. B, documented housing counseling capacity, outreach capacity, past successful performance and positive outcomes with documented counseling plans, including post-mortgage foreclosure mitigation counseling, loan workout agreements, and loan modification agreements. And C, that they've achieved one of the following: provided foreclosure counseling services that included documented action plans to at least 50 people during the past year, or 20 people during the past quarter, or if greater than 75% of the applicant's service area is rural, an applicant provided foreclosure counseling services that included documented action plans to at least 25 people during the past year, or 10 people during the past quarter, or applicant has provided foreclosure counseling services that include documented action plans to at least 12 people during the past year and has at least one comprehensively trained and qualified foreclosure counselor on staff. All eligible applicants must also adhere to the National Industry Standards for Homeownership Education and Counseling Foreclosure Intervention Specialty, and demonstrates the ability to provide A, reasonable analysis of borrower's financial situation, B, evaluation of current value of the property that is subject to the mortgage, C, counseling regarding assumption of the mortgage or possible purchase of the mortgage by non-federal third party, or D, counseling and advice of all likely restructuring and refinancing strategies or approval of a workout strategy by all interested parties. Now, the following groups are not eligible to apply for NFMC supplemental grant funding. One is NWOs, NeighborWorks organizations, with a provisional charter, individual homeowners, local housing counseling agencies cannot apply directly, but they may apply as a subgrantee of a housing finance agency or a HUD-approved intermediary or a contracted counseling agency of a NeighborWorks organization. National and regional housing counseling intermediaries that are not HUD-approved, state housing finance agencies that do not have statutory authority to work statewide, legal assistance organizations that are not HUD-approved housing counseling intermediaries, as well as any organization that is not in compliance with Office of Management and Budget A133 audit requirements and Budget Uniform Grant Guidance, which includes topics previously addressed in a number of Office of Management and Budget circulars, which are all listed here. Next, the beneficiaries of our program by the NFMC program statute are homes with mortgages in default or in danger of default will be provided such assistance, likely to prevent foreclosures and result in the long-term affordability of the mortgage retained pursuant to such activity or another positive outcome for the homeowner. Positive outcome is defined as home ownership preservation or, if not, least burdensome outcome. Examples of this could be bringing the loan current, refinancing the existing mortgage, modifying the mortgage, getting agreement on a forbearance agreement, sale of the home, short sale of the home, or deed in lieu. Now, some more information about the areas of greatest need. We will continue to ensure that a majority of funds must go to geographic areas of greatest need per the NFMC program statute, which is as follows. Provide mortgage foreclosure mitigations assistance primarily to states and areas with high rates of default and foreclosures, as well as in areas where there's a prevalence of mortgages that are risky and likely to fail, or mortgages that are likely to default or face foreclosure. So given that statute, NFMC worked to determine these areas, and our analysis is comprised of data from owner-occupied loans active as of June 2016, provided by Black Knight Financial Services from both prime and subprime mortgage markets. The areas of greatest need: in the first step of analysis, a total of 381 metropolitan and 536 micropolitan areas were separately ranked in each category. In the second step of the analysis, every metropolitan area that was in the worst quintile for at least 2 of the 13 indicators were considered an area of greatest need. For micropolitan rural areas, states where half or more of the micropolitan areas were in the worst quintile for at least 2 of the 13 indicators presented were considered an area of greatest need. The actual areas of greatest need are listed in the funding announcement addendum. And we see here we've got 13 indicators I presented on the screen, which are the indicators used to determine areas of greatest need. For supplemental grant funds, as with NFMC Round 10, there will be locations described as areas of extraordinary need, both metropolitan statistical areas and rural areas of states. Consideration will be given to applicants working in these areas that can convincingly describe their strategy to reach homeowners facing foreclosure in those areas. A metropolitan area and rural areas of states are deemed an area of extraordinary need if either of the following are true. The area fell in the worst quintile for at least 5 or more of the 13 indicators, or the area was ranked among the worst quintile and represented the top decile in 2 or more of the 13 indicators. A micropolitan rural area has been deemed an area of extraordinary need if the area fell in the worst quintile for at least 5 or more of the 13 indicators and represented more than half of the micropolitan areas of the state, or the area was ranked among the worst quintile and represented the top decile in 2 or more of the 13 indicators and represented more than half of the micropolitan areas in the state. For the purposes of this analysis, data for the territory of Puerto Rico was aggregated at the territory level. Data indicators provided by Black Knight Financial Services for Puerto Rico MSAs had very low sampling rates. For this reason, it was decided to aggregate all Puerto Rico data at the territory level. Under the analysis, Puerto Rico met all of the requirements to be considered an MSA and a rural area of extraordinary need.
And so within your application for those who provide services to Puerto Rico, you'll note instead of having 2 designations in the MSA area and the rural area, we've just collapsed that representation in the rural designation slot for areas of extraordinary need, where you will enter the number of units you intend to serve there, but it will be representative of both metropolitan and micropolitan. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Nicole. So now we will talk about the eligible uses of the NFMC program. There are 3 categories of funding for HFAs, State Housing Finance Agencies, and HUD-approved intermediaries, and 2 categories of funding for NeighborWorks organizations. The 3 categories of funding for intermediaries and housing finance agencies are counseling, program-related support, and operational oversight. For NeighborWorks organizations, the only 2 categories are counseling and program-related support. Operational oversight is a category of funding specific to HFAs and intermediaries that have subgrantees. It's specifically intended to help support those organizations in their management of subgrantees, which would be branches or affiliates. Within the counseling category, there are 2 levels of counseling that grantees administer. Level 1 counseling is valued at $150 and includes documentation for all of the following activities: intake, including basic demographic information, lender and loan information, and reason for delinquency. Authorization that allows organization to A, submit client-level information to the data collection system for this grant, and open files to be reviewed for program monitoring and conduct follow-up with client-related program evaluation. Third activity is privacy policy. The fourth item is disclosure of conflict of interest. Next is budget, based on clients' oral representation of their expenses, debts, and available resources of income. A written action plan for follow-up activities to be taken by the client and reviewing this action plan with the client. Making home affordable eligibility screening. The MHA checklist was introduced in NFMC Round 10 and will still be valid for supplemental grant funds. Please review the funding announcement and the supplemental grants addendum to that funding announcement for more detailed information on these requirements for Level 1 counseling, and indeed for all eligible uses. Okay. Level 2 counseling is valued at $300 per unit and includes all the following items: budget verification, authorization form, if not already on file, privacy policy, disclosure of conflict of interest, the verification of action taken toward the solution outlined in the written action plan is documented, and the date counseling occurred is also indicated there as well. Closeout documentation is recommended but is no longer required. Again, please review the Round 10 funding announcement as well as the Round 10 and supplemental grants funding announcement addendum for more detailed information on these requirements. The second category of funding in the NFMC program is program-related support, which is used to support direct costs associated with increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of your ability to provide quality foreclosure counseling. Successful applicants will receive a flat 20% of their counseling award for program-related support. Examples of valid uses are the following: establishing a triage system, outreach to delinquent borrowers, group orientation and education, outreach and communication on preventing rescue or loan modification scams, infrastructure development and communication, technology improvements, improving capacity for tracking and reporting data, costs for hiring, orienting, and training new counseling staff, purchasing or leasing equipment and software, collecting data and preparing quarterly reports and disbursement requests, quality control and compliance. Okay. The third category of funding is operational oversight, which again is just a category that's reserved for HUD-approved intermediaries and state housing financing agencies, both of which are responsible for communicating program requirements to all subgrantees, branches, or affiliates, ensuring those organizations' compliance and reporting on their behalf. Operational oversight funds can be used to help in these areas. Applicants will receive 7% of their counseling award for the first 2.5 million in counseling award funds, and 5% thereafter for operational oversight. These activities will include the following: grant or funding management of subgrantees, branches, and affiliates, support of data collection activities, client record keeping and reporting, quality control, day-to-day oversight activities, and improvements to systems and infrastructure. Great. Next, we're going to look into the match fund requirement. Previous grants have required that award recipients match the funding they receive from the NFMC program. Recognizing the limits of time and financial resources, match requirements are as follows. Applicant match must be related to applicant's foreclosure mitigation program. This program must include delinquency prevention and foreclosure intervention counseling, but may also include triage, outreach, or mortgage workout funding, plus any administrative or overhead expenses associated with the program. Matching funds can be cash or in kind, such as staff time, office space, volunteer time, donated equipment, etc. Other federal funds may not be counted towards match requirements. Examples of federal funds ineligible for use as match include, but are not limited to, other HUD housing counseling funds, NeighborWorks America grants to its chartered members from congressionally appropriated dollars. Examples of funds that are eligible for match include fees received from servicers or lenders for providing foreclosure counseling to clients not counseled under this NFMC program, funds received to capitalize mortgage rescue funds, foundation and corporate grants received for operating a foreclosure counseling and mitigation program, and municipal, county, or state grants for operating a foreclosure counseling and mitigation program, as long as those funds do not originally have a federal source. Applicants must provide a 20% match for the first $500,000 in funding they received from the NFMC program. After the first $500,000, the required match rate drops to 10% for any additional dollars received. The match requirement may be waived for counseling delivered in defined geographic areas suffering from high poverty and low income levels. Guidelines for how to determine what areas may qualify for a waiver can be found in the funding announcement as well as the supplemental grants funding announcement addendum. Great. For supplemental grants, all grantees will receive awarded funds through a reimbursable structure. So as counseling sessions are recorded, grant award disbursements are triggered for release. There are 7 disbursements established that predefine the release of funds. I'm going through the list here of disbursements quickly. First, there's the first disbursement, and there's the second, third, fourth, as well as fifth disbursement, which total encapsulates 95% of the total counseling awards delivered. Secondly, there's the final disbursement, which is the 6th and 7th disbursement. These consist of the last 5% of the funds available. Disbursement 6 will require the grantee to have counseled enough clients to total 100% of its total counseling award, and the grantee has completed its final report. Disbursement 7, which is the remaining 2.5% of grant dollars, will be dispersed after the organization has completed its obligations related to the program evaluation and compliance. Grantees will be stopped in the data collection system at each disbursement threshold, so NFMC can validate your work in all geographic areas it proposed to conduct counseling in, and ensure that your counseling units delivered at level 1 and level 2 are within appropriate variances as stated in your application. Quarterly reports must be up to date and completed prior to disbursements being released. Please note that no grantee will receive multiple disbursements at one time. Now, some grantees will wind up having modified disbursement schedules or be subject to file reviews prior to disbursements if NFMC determines there is a compliance or audit risk. So I didn't read through these 2 slides verbatim, but as we post this presentation to the site, you're welcome to review it more carefully for more detail. Great, next I'm going to go through 2 examples of how these disbursements may work. This first example, you'll see a table here that illustrates the disbursement and reporting for both HUD-approved intermediaries and housing finance agencies. You'll see that it outlines both the counseling award amount that this sample organization received, the program-related support amount, as well as the operational oversight amount that they received to monitor and administer the grant with their sub-grantees, branches, and affiliates. And you'll see broken out here for the, say, 5 disbursements. You'll see how they're broken out. First, 15% of the counseling award amount, say 20% for program-related support, and then 7% for operational oversight in the first disbursement, and then other disbursements going through disbursement 5 to be the total of 95%. As well as you then see the final 6 and 7 disbursements therein to fulfill all the disbursement requirements. And below it, you see the production required per corresponding production required per disbursement. Now, in this next slide, I'm showing how the disbursement reporting works for NeighborWorks organizations. See, it works very similarly, except that there's only two types of counseling funds that are provided. Of award funds that are provided. First is the counseling award amount, and second is program-related support amount. Great. So next, with regards to reporting, all clients will be entered into a web-based data collection system. Disbursements are based on production you as a grantee will upload in the NFMC data collection system. So please report regularly, especially since the only way to get additional supplemental grant funds is to have spent down all awarded funds. Can't emphasize this enough. It's important to be really prompt with reporting regularly and try to do so frequently so you can stay up to date and in addition to receiving additional funds, not fall behind and then having large numbers of clients you need to report at any given time. Grantees awarded supplemental grants will be issued additional performance benchmarks as well to ensure consistent monthly reporting of client-level production during its awarded performance period. Grantees do not show substantial progress toward meeting their counseling goals. NeighborWorks reserves the right to recapture or deobligate funds and/or implement a more conservative disbursement schedule. There are also quarterly reports that are required once you sign your grant agreement. And there will also be ongoing program evaluation requirements that all grantees must meet, notably compliance reviews and participating in program evaluation. Exhibit 5 of the Round 10 Supplemental Grants and Funding Announcement has thorough information and requirements that have to be met for disbursements to occur based on commitments you will make in your submitted application. There will be requirements for each disbursement with regards to requisite match funds, allowable variances by geographic area, allowable variances by counseling level, contracted requirements to provide a certain amount of counseling sessions in low income or minority zip codes or low income or minority homeowners. Also in Exhibit 5, provisions are outlined if the grantee has not met its contracted requirements. Please see the funding announcement for more specific information. Great, I'm now going to turn the presentation over back to Nicole Harmon, who will continue onward.
Great, thank you so much, right? So now let's dive into the supplemental grant scoring and award criteria. And within this section, I will also provide you an overview of the application types that we have for supplemental grants. So the basic threshold requirement all applicants must meet include, on this slide, these threshold requirements. First, you'll be asked to attest to a series of certifications. These certifications are laid out in detail in the funding announcement and addendum. The demonstrated experience you'll be asked to speak to, and Strike already went through the demonstrated experience in previous slides. If you're a state housing finance agency, you'll have to certify that you have the statute authority to work statewide. For intermediaries, you must be HUD approved by 5 p.m. by the deadline of the supplemental grant application of November 9th. And for NeighborWorks organizations, you must attest that you have obtained your charter prior to the deadline as well of November 9th, and your charter must not be provisional. So most of you returning Round 10 grantees will have the benefit of completing the abbreviated application. This application is similar to the streamlined application in previous rounds, but even shorter, which I'm sure you all will appreciate. Based on the merits for those that are returning Round 10 grantees, based on the merits of your application that we just received from you literally a few months ago under the Round 10 application process. Since that information was just recently reviewed and scored this past spring, this will serve as the basis of your supplemental grant application process moving forward. So, and I'll explain a bit of what that means in more detail in subsequent slides. So for the abbreviated application, in order to be eligible for this application, a grantee or applicant must meet all 4 of the following criteria. The organization is a Round 10 grantee. The organization's foreclosure counseling service delivery model has not changed since the submission of its Round 10 application. The organization's foreclosure counseling capacity has not significantly changed since the submission of its Round 10 application. And lastly, the organization is actively reporting and submitting production into the data collection system under its Round 10 grant, or has completed its Round 10 grant already. Therefore, if you're a returning Round 10 applicant, if your organization has had really any significant changes, which include improvements made to either service delivery or your capacity, and definitions are laid out for you in detail as to what significant change means in the requisite application guides, which are posted online. As long as there has not been a significant change since we've reviewed and scored your last application, the abbreviated application is available to you now in GrantWorks. Okay. So as I mentioned, the merits of the Round 10 application for those that are privy to the abbreviated application was previously reviewed and scored this past spring. Therefore, the application is shorter. There are very few questions to answer. Your score for supplemental grants will be comprised of the threshold requirements, which I've just reviewed. 60% of your score will be related to past performance and compliance. 40% of your score will be related to your supplemental grant performance plan. Now, all of the supplemental grant performance plan scores and some of your past performance and compliance scores will come from or carry over from your Round 10 application score. There's more information and detail in the funding announcement and the addendum in terms of what components of these scores are actually being carried over. Therefore, for the past performance and compliance section, we will be asking for updated compliance information on any current reviews that are underway or reviews that are going on with other counseling programs. That information we will re-ask you in the abbreviated application and will be newly scored and updated by our NFMC team. And I'll touch on that a bit more in subsequent slides, I believe. Okay. So for full application, so new applicants, and that is applicants that are not in Round 10 and Round 10 applicants that either have had significant changes to their service delivery model or capacity, must complete the full application. These applications will be scored and independently reviewed by review teams. So here's a breakdown of how the full applications are structured and will be weighted out of 100 points. So if you're a returning grantee, and which means you have either previously received NFMC funds, or if you're a Round 10 grantee that has a service capacity or service delivery model change, this section pertains to you. You'll be asked to certify to a series of threshold requirements. Your past performance and compliance will also be rated at 60% of your overall score, and your performance plan will also be rated at 40%. For first-time applicants, the structure is flipped. So you'll also speak to the threshold requirements. Your demonstrated experience will be weighted at 40% of your overall score, and supplemental grant performance plan will be weighted at 60%. Okay, so we'll dive into each of these sections a little bit more to give you sort of a flavor of what each section of your application is comprised of. Again, more detail is fleshed out in the funding announcement and the addendum, which is posted online. So if you're a returning grantee and you're completing a full application, the past performance and compliance in NFMC as well as other counseling programs will be worth, as I stated, 60% of your overall review team score. And so it will include performance topics such as your ability to spend down your current NFMC grant if you have one, or previous NFMC grants, how applicants, which would be you and your subgrantee branches or affiliates or contracted counseling entities, address challenges within your foreclosure counseling program, and experience managing foreclosure intervention counseling programs, experience with staff, and the effectiveness in acting as an intermediary if you are a state housing finance agency or a HUD-approved intermediary. That part would pertain to you. Continuing on with what's covered in past performance and compliance, will also include assessments if you were a prior grantee of NFMC that was placed on a modified disbursement schedule, either in round 10, and whether you've remedied the reason for that placement. We'll review audited financials. You'll discuss any results of the round 9 random client file review compliance process for either you as the direct applicant or any of the subs that participated with you in under round 9. You'll also be assessed under your compliance standing under HUD and compliance with HUD Housing Counseling Program that pertains to you, your subgrantees, branches, affiliates, or CCEs. You'll also be assessed on whether rounds 7, 8, 9, and 10 funds have ever been recaptured. We'll review the timeliness of your reporting if you're an applicant or that participated in rounds 9 or 10. And if you're a network organization, your health rating will also be assessed. Now, for returning grantees, your performance plan assessments will include, but are not limited to, your oversight as applicable to subgrantees, branches, affiliates, or contracted counseling entities, your service delivery model, projected goals, and the justification for any increase that you describe in your application. We'll assess partnerships that you may have, your capacity to perform, your capacity to report, track, and refer homeowners for additional services. We'll review your plan for program-related support and operational oversight outreach usage. Also, your service to areas of extraordinary need will be assessed, as well as the likelihood of you as the applicant being able to obtain match funds. Again, the funding announcement and the addendum go through these steps in detail in terms of how the applications are being scored that pertain to you as the applicant type. Okay, so now this next section is really geared to first-time applicants. So first-time applicants, your demonstrated experience assessments will include, but again are not limited to, your demonstrated experience in providing foreclosure counseling, how you as the applicant, your subgrantee branches or affiliates or contracted counseling entities address challenges, your experience with program delivery and managing foreclosure counseling programs, experience staff, your compliance with HUD housing counseling programs, and those subgrantee branches and affiliates. A review of your audited financials will also be assessed. If you're HFA or a intermediary, we'll review your effectiveness as acting as an intermediary. And if you're a network organization, your organizational health rating will be assessed. Now, for first-time applicants completing the full application, your performance plan assessments, which is worth 60% of your overall score, will assess your oversight of, if applicable, for subgrantees, branches, and affiliates, or CCEs. Your service delivery model will be reviewed. Your projected goals and justification for any increase that you describe in your application will be assessed. Ongoing partnerships, the capacity to perform, as well as the capacity to report, track, and refer homeowners. Your plan for program-related support and operational oversight, as well as outreach, service to areas of extraordinary need, and the likelihood of obtaining match funds will be assessed as part of your performance plan score. Okay. So some general notes on the award decision. We reserve the right to change any of the following items as necessary. So if recommended amounts exceed the available funding, we have to award. NeighborWorks may place award amount caps and floors. We can consider spend down rate of previous funds, impose across the board cuts, limit funding to service areas of need, limit funding based on compliance standing. And then when making award decisions, we do consider whether applicants are in good standing with HUD and with NFMC. And so we may draw on information outside of the application that you submit that would weigh into our award decision. Now, applicants that are, when we say must be in good standing with the NFMC program and or with HUD Housing Counseling Funds, in good standing for NFMC means that you as an applicant does not have a notice of default that is effective and that you're not currently suspended from the NFMC program. Also, not in good standing as it pertains to HUD is defined as if if you have been cited or if we're made aware that you as an applicant have a failure to comply with the laws and regulations that govern HUD housing counseling programs, or there is an inability for you as the grantee to draw down from HUD housing counseling grant funds for any reason. Applicants, as I've gone over the scoring and award decisions, applicants can score well, but still may not receive funding due to the limited grant pool. And so I opened up our briefing sort of explaining the amount of funding that we have on hand to award. So as of to date, with no continuing resolution, if this competition is only available to fund applicants at 1.7 million, which is what we have to award, obviously it narrows the number of applicants that may be selected as fundable. So if that is the case, I'll just reiterate here about our eligible grantee list. Depending if there are subsequent funding opportunities that come through the program in FY17, groups that may be eligible for additional supplemental grant fundings that are not, let's say, awarded funds initially, will go on our eligible grantee list. And we'll be notified should additional funds come our way, we'd be able to roll a grant out to those applicants that are on that list. Any award decisions that NeighborWorks makes or determines underneath this competition will be final. They cannot be appealed. This is stated in our funding announcement and addendum. However, after any award announcement, applicants may request a debriefing from NeighborWorks in writing within 30 days of our award announcement. Okay, so here's where we discuss the notables and changes. And this really aggregates all changes from under the NFMC program since inception till now. Any most recent change from round 10, which was just announced in the spring, and now within supplemental grants are sort of noted here in red highlight for you, or in red text. So there have been minimal changes when in comparison to round 10. We'll highlight these changes for you. The move to a reimbursable payment structure has occurred in round 9. So we're no longer forward funding grantees under the NFMC program. Everything is on a reimbursable structure, and Strike went over that in a previous slide. Areas of greatest need was newly added definition in round 9 that reviewed areas for extraordinary levels of distress among certain localities throughout the nation where high delinquency and foreclosure rates exist. In round 10, we have created a variance in those areas of extraordinary need of 15%. We will use that again throughout the supplemental grant performance periods. There have been changes to the Making Home Affordable component of the NFMC program. In round 10, we removed the reason for referral requirement and expanded on definitions. This will also remain in effect. And there's more discussion about the Making Home Affordable level 4 components in the funding announcement, and in terms of wind down and NeighborWorks' position on this requirement is spelled out in the funding announcement. The definition, particularly around refinance, was expanded as well. Other notable features that aren't new, I'll just run through these very quickly. Handling of duplicate clients. There is a 5% waiver that we will apply at the end of the performance period for all applicants who submit production, as long as the 5% waiver is for any non-self duplicates that are determined in the reporting system. With the counseling levels, we at one point had level 3, it's no longer in existence. Level 1, we instituted the Making Home Affordable screening sheet. That will still become a requirement for level 1 moving forward through the end of the Making Home Affordable submission date, which will expire at the end of December. Closeout documentation is not required for level 2. In order to keep as many options as possible available to clients, applicants must not engage in exclusivity agreements with clients seeking foreclosure or delinquency counseling or other interested parties such as servicers or lenders, nor shall they otherwise engage in practices which exclude other counseling agencies from working with its client or its client servicer or lender. Random client files review was implemented as part of our quality control and compliance monitoring activities. Those will continue. Again, I can't highlight this enough. It's just we encourage you to read fully the funding announcement and the addendum that pertains to supplemental grants. This briefing is just sort of a high-level overview of some of the highlights and changes, but there are additional details in there that you should definitely take back to your teams and read as you apply for, as you submit your application. Now, I went over the abbreviated applicant criteria. A little bit more here on which components of their round 10 scores will actually move forward. Again, based on the merits of the application that was just recently submitted to NeighborWorks in the spring from returning round 10 grantees, you will have your performance plan scores carried forward. You will carry forward most of your past performance and compliance scores, and have your most recent NFMC program and other counseling program compliance and adherence questions reviewed in this application that you're completing. And then the information will be scored internally by NeighborWorks staff and added to your carry forward score. Other notable change or other notables to make reference to and highlight is for supplemental grants, the performance period will be no greater than 12 months. Strike spoke a bit about performance benchmarks that will be deployed as part of the ongoing reporting and data collection. So grantees that are awarded supplemental grants will be issued additional performance benchmarks to ensure that there is consistent and steady monthly reporting of client level production during the awarded performance period. We will be a bit rigorous on grantees reporting regularly throughout the performance period, particularly if there's a limited grant pool. So there will be benchmarks that will be issued for you under your agreement. Any grantees, and this is not new, but grantees that do not show substantial progress towards meeting their goals, NeighborWorks does reserve the right to recapture, deobligate funds, and or implement a conservative disbursement schedule where we've identified slow performance. The duplicate reset, we've changed the dating so that it applies to supplemental grants here. So any client served prior to January 1st of 2017 can be served again through this supplemental grant process, provided that it is a new level 1 or level 2 counseling session and their circumstances have changed. And the eligible grantee list, which I've discussed a few times previously. Again, should additional funding become available throughout fiscal year 2017, if grantees that are deemed eligible through this competition for an award, but may not receive an award due to the limited pool of funding, we will add those applicants to an eligible grantee list, and we'll roll out grants should additional funds come our way under the program throughout the 2017 fiscal year. Okay. So also, applicants may apply on their own and or through multiple intermediaries or HFAs or NeighborWorks network organizations. Where this is the case, those applicants must segment counseling goals by funding source and supply disclosure letters to all entities through which it's applying. I'll talk a little bit about this more in detail in terms of the process of how we're collecting this information in your application in a subsequent slide. For NeighborWorks organizations, you still have the ability to contract with contracted counseling entities, or CCEs, as it's throughout the whole entire presentation, to provide foreclosure counseling services. You'll be able to contract with those counseling entities to provide foreclosure counseling services, provided that those arrangements are simply contractual nature. The CCE must be a nonprofit organization. Your CCE cannot, you cannot contract out more than 50% of your awarded units. And you'd be asked to sign a reps and warranties, which is a supplement to the grant agreement. So all grantees must adhere to program requirements that are outlined in full in the funding announcement and the addendum that we've posted, especially regarding compliance with file requirements and programmatic requirements. We'll have a draft grant agreement posted on our website for you to review, as well as share with your recipients closer to the award determination period. All grantees will be subject to our default and remedy policy, which will also be posted on our website. For round 10, our default and remedy policy is actually posted. So if you want an idea of what that looks like, it is available. NFMC grantees must also have policies and procedures in place for the discovery of the destruction of NFMC program-related records as a result of a natural or man-made disaster for itself and or for subgrantees, branches, and affiliates or contracted counseling entities. Grantees must also comply with the program's record retention policy, which states that your financials records, any supporting documentation, statistical records, and all records pertinent to this grant must be retained for a period of 3 years from the date of the submission of your final report for that round. Grantees must also keep a separate budget for NFMC funding. Now, the OMB circular changes were in effect for awards made after December 26, 2014. This was a change that was announced actually during the launch of round 10. So this is still in effect. It still applies for awards issued after this date. Grantees that are nonprofit organizations or state or local government entities are subject to the requirements of the uniform administration requirements, cost principles, auditing requirements for federal awards, all under the uniform grant guidance of CFR 200. And within the guidance, we ask, it actually mandates for recipients of federal dollars to be in compliance with CFR 300 as it relates to subrecipient monitoring of these funds. Okay. So couple of notable changes that actually occur in GrantWorks. I'm going to go through with you all now. Unlike in prior eligible applicants briefings, normally we hold a live GrantWorks demonstration, but since we have prior recordings of those demonstrations, we actually have them posted on our website, so that if you're interested in the process of how to get started in GrantWorks, or if you need a refresher of how to navigate through your application page, that information or that training is posted on our website. It actually replicates the application process from round 10, but some of the functionality remains the same for the supplemental grant period. So if you're interested in GrantWorks, technical assistance, how to get started in your application, refer to those recordings that are posted. What won't be shared in those videos is this screen that you're looking at right now, or this slide, is the applicant contact information page. This is actually something new that we've added in to all of the 3 application types, where we're going to ask for a primary application contact and a secondary application contact. For us on the administrative side, if we need to reach you for any reason, we understand logins have been shared, and their prior staff may be logged in as in the system, that are no longer at your organization. So whenever it comes time to contacting you as the organization, if there's an issue with your application, we've been unsuccessful in reaching those that are actually providing the grant information. So this is a contact information page. Again, we'll ask for name, phone number, and email information should we need to reach you at any time during the application period. You'll notice at the bottom of this form, or this box, which is automated in your application, we're going to ask that you have your executive director, if that may be your president or CEO, certify through the checkbox that's provided there that the contact information for your organization has been reviewed and is efficient. Now, I previously discussed under the notables and changes where applicants can sort of partner with other applicants, or if there are sub-grantees that are partnering with other direct grantees through this application process, there is a disclosure requirement that we've required. There's a disclosure requirement under the NFMC program, and we're collecting the information around those disclosures a little bit differently this round. That will not be in the demos that will be provided for you, but I'm going to go over it here. So this is a screenshot from the HFA and the intermediary full application. The question numbers are the same in the NWO full application, and for the abbreviated application, the question numbers will look differently, but the process and the function all remains the same. So if you're an organization that will work with subgrantee branches, affiliates, or CCEs that are also applying or partnering with other applicants, then this slide pertains to you, and I need you to make sure you're with me and understanding what we're going to ask from you in the application process. Also, if you're an organization that will work with subgrantees, branches, affiliates, or CCEs that are also applying directly themselves for funding, then this slide pertains to you, and you'll need to make sure you follow these instructions as required. Okay, so if these scenarios pertain to you, you as the direct applicant must let us know who those organizations are. You will be required to disclose who else your subgrantees, your branches, affiliates, etc. are applying with, and you'll need to let us know how many counseling units they will deliver under each application, including your own organization's application. The second question here, number 5, is if your organization is applying directly and with other applicants, there is a question where you must supply information on whether the other organizations you are applying with and your counseling and the counseling goals that you intend to deliver under those other direct applicants. So in the past, there usually were disclosure template letters that you would send out, you would have signed, you would aggregate and upload in the system. This time, we've replaced those disclosure letter templates with a spreadsheet, and we'll go to it right now so you can give you a look. All right. This is the multiple application disclosure spreadsheet, which is located on our NFMC page. Everybody can see that? Okay, great. So the questions that I just went over, if your organization is working with subgrantees, branches, or affiliates that are applying and or partnering with another applicant, this first tab indicates the instructions as to what you will need to do. So if you want to hit question 4A, tab, this is actually where you'll be listing those subgrantees and branches, contact information, letting us know also the number of units that subgrantee, branch, and affiliate will not only deliver under your direct contract or application, but also identifying units that they will be delivering under other applicants as well. I would also like to just point out, just back at the beginning of column A, please, as much as it's so easy to write acronyms, we beg of you to please indicate the full name, full legal name of your subgrantee, branches, or affiliates if they're being listed on this page. Okay. Now, question 5 pertains to use the direct applicant. If you're a direct applicant that is looking to also seek subrecipient funding from another direct NFMC applicant, we're going to need you to disclose that information as well. So here are the instructions for how you're going to complete this section of the spreadsheet. When you're ready to log in your information, you're going to go to the question 5A tab, and you're going to indicate the top line is your direct request by level 1, level 2, how many units you're seeking as a direct grantee. And then the next line lets us know how many additional and who are those additional applicants that you're seeking subrecipient or subgrantee funds from, and the number of units you're requesting from those additional direct applicants as well. And so the spreadsheet's total at the bottom, what we'd like you to do is aggregate that information, save it, save everything in one workbook, and you can, we'll go back to the presentation now. Once this spreadsheet is completed, you're going to go ahead and upload, go back. You're going to upload that spreadsheet workbook in either question 4 or and 5 as applicable. Both information can be saved in the same workbook and re-uploaded twice. That would be fine. Okay. So what you all who are returning, normally how we would collect this information is through this template letter that you would PDF and then aggregate and upload all at one time. This is still going to be a requirement, although you're not going to upload it into your application. As a best practice, if you've identified which subgrantees, branches, affiliates, or other direct applicants you're seeking funding through, it'd be good to send this out to your subgrantees and affiliates, have them complete this as the direct applicant, and you as the direct applicant should aggregate this information, put it on the spreadsheet, but save these template letters for any future compliance reviews and or if NeighborWorks asks you for these letters, you want to make sure that you're keeping them on file. All direct applicants should keep this on file. Okay. All right. So now I'll turn it back to Stripe, and he's going to go over the timeline, and then we'll shortly approaching Q&A. So get your questions in the chat box, and we'll work through responding to those.
Great. So now I'm going to go through the timeline for the supplemental grant program. And starting yesterday and today, we've had the eligible applicant briefings, the 2 briefings we're going to do for this grant round. And as a reminder, we're going to make the slide presentation that we're showing today, as well as a recording from either yesterday or today's session, available on the NeighborWorks.org program page for supplemental grants, so that if your colleagues or if you would like to go back and read through it in more detail, you can do so there. And so also starting today on October 12th, grant applications have gone live in GrantWorks application portal. So please feel free to go there and get started on your application and to look through the requirements. This has been enabled, of course, for all eligible organizations that we went through before, the types of organizations that are eligible to apply. And please also note that for each of your organizations, it's only the authorized officials who are allowed to request grant funds who will have access to the system. There may be other members of your team who are editors or have some other additional user level. They won't be able to initially get in and access the system. So please just keep that in mind as you have people get started on the program, the application. And next milestone we have is that on November 1st, the expression of interest letter is due to us. We asked for this a little bit in advance of the application deadline, principally so we can know who to expect an application from. And if we haven't seen much activity, we're able to reach out to you and confirm your interest and try to help you make sure if you have any questions on getting started, you can do so. You don't miss the deadline. And the deadline for applications is November 9th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We encourage you, highly encourage you to try to finish your application in advance of the deadline. This is principally so we can assist with any questions or any technical assistance you might need, so it's not happening at the 11th hour. And also the system at GrantWorks does get very busy on that last day, so we certainly want to reduce the burden of the system managing all these applicants who are trying to finish up their applications all at once. So once again, that's November 9th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Promptly on the next day.
Oh, I think we missed the timeline.
Oh. I apologize. I did not change the page. See here again, starting to here's the timeline going through yesterday and today for the eligible applicant briefings. Applications also opening GrantWorks today. Expression of interest letter, as I mentioned, is due November 1st. Then November 9th is the application deadline at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And then promptly on the next day, November 10th, the application review process will begin. And we'll get started very quickly to review the applications and be in touch if any quick modifications are needed. Otherwise, we'll be getting started scoring them, the long process of scoring your application. And then in /1 of calendar year 2017, we'll be making the award announcements, and we'll be posting them to the NeighborWorks.org /NFMC Program page for supplemental grants, as well as providing letters of intention to award funds will be distributed to those applications that we've made awards to. So I'll pause here again, since I didn't have this up right away. I'm sorry for that. So you can see this timeline, which of course is subject to change, but this is our best efforts, so this is the timeline we'll have for this grant round. And of course, this presentation will be made available on the NeighborWorks.org /NFMC supplemental page for you to refer to. Yeah. Great. And next, as a reminder, I just say we're going to have all the resource materials related to this grant round available on our supplemental grant page, which I will now navigate to just to show you briefly how to get there. The initial link to go to is the NeighborWorks.org /NFMC, and then on the right-hand column, there will be listing the grant round, and you will click to supplemental grants. But let me change over right there quickly for a moment to show you what this looks like. The initial page you will come to will be our just NFMC main page, which has some initial information, but then you go over on the right-hand side, and there's a link directly for supplemental grants. You can click on that. It brings you to the supplemental grant main page with some information on the grant round. Obviously, also has a prompt for the expression of interest letter to send that to us by November 1st, and then has lists of the different eligible applicant types. And then down the page, we've got a whole host of resources available to show you resources and tools for completing your application and relevant to the supplemental grant round. We've got the expression of interest letter. We have the round 10 funding announcement. We have the funding announcement addendum, which is specific additional information about supplemental grants. Of course, both those documents you should look at together to cover this complete activity and policies for our supplemental grants. We've already posted a copy of this presentation, and we will be posting shortly a recorded session of either yesterday or today's presentation. We also have here links, as Nicole mentioned, to a demo on how GrantWorks operates, how to log in, how to navigate from screen to screen and factor to factor of the application. We have a separate link that's specific for NeighborWorks organizations, and then one that's specific for housing finance agencies and HUD-approved intermediaries. Their application looks a little bit different than that of the NeighborWorks organization. And then we have here a list of for both full and the abbreviated applications. We have the complete list of questions in the application, as well as we have a guide to how to answer those questions, both for the abbreviated application and then separately for our HFAs and intermediaries, and well, for the NeighborWorks organizations too. And then we have various supplemental materials and templates, including data collection forms for both full and abbreviated applications, the sample disclosure letter, which Nicole showed you previously in a previous slide, the disclosure spreadsheets that we just went through. Those are the Excel spreadsheets where you identify all the other organizations that may be operating, receiving grant funds through you or through another grantee. And then we have counseling agency location forms as well. And further down, we've got the client level data points, the quarterly reporting requirements, as well as reference documents on zip codes that are majority low income and majority minority. The areas of greatest need methodology we've uploaded here in greater detail. We have a link to the national industry standards for foreclosure intervention counseling, a sample authorization and privacy policy, the Making Home Affordable eligibility screening checklist, as well as guidance for valuing in-kind match. And then finally, as a reminder, for those first-time housing finance agency and intermediary applicants, we will need a couple additional items to get you started in our system to receive grant funds and be a grantee. One is an IRS Form W-9. Secondly is a proof of a 501c3 status. And lastly is the name, address, and contact information for authorized officials who can submit applications for funding on behalf of this organization. If you are a first-time HFA intermediate applicant, you're welcome to send us these 3 items right away if we don't already have it on file for you. So we can set you up in the GrantWorks application system. That would be very helpful. Thank you. So once again, this is go to neighborworks.org. You can also go to, you navigated to Homes and Finances Foreclosure. That would take you to the main page. And from there on the right-hand side, there will be a link directly to supplemental grants. You need to get this page, and we will be updating it, of course, throughout the periodically throughout the application period. All right, so once again, here I've got a list of all these different items that we've made available as I've just shown you. Great, so thank you. On that note, we will then turn to any questions you have. We see there's a number of questions that have already come into the chat box. We will thank you very much for those. We'll address those one by one. As we go through and answer questions, if any additional questions come up, please, of course, enter them into the chat box and address them to everyone so that your fellow attendees can see that that question's been asked in case they have the same question.
Okay, great. All right. So first question, although MHA ends in December, will the MHA eligibility checklist be required? The answer is yes. The MHA checklist will still be a requirement if you are counseling clients through December 30th of 2016. After that date is actually the December 30th date is the last date for submission of a MHA or HAMP package through the Treasury. So after that time, the checklist will not be a requirement. Since funds are prioritized for use in areas of greatest need, how does that work for an HFA that services borrowers throughout the entire state? This is a good question. So as we stated in our funding announcement, some of the grant funds may be utilized outside of areas of greatest need. However, we do reserve the right to limit funding solely to areas of greatest need if demand is high and the availability of program funding is low. So in the case where we have such a small award pool, but a high volume of applicants, we made at the time of the award announcement look at indicators such as areas of greatest need and or even deeper to areas of extraordinary need to target funding to. Good question. Next question here. In order to be eligible for supplemental funds, an agency must have spent down all other NFMC funds, is the question. As part of our award determination criteria, we will be looking at spend down rates. We will look at your service delivery and performance within areas of need, as well as compliance standing. So all of these are factors that funnel into the criteria by which we'll make our award determination. So if you are actually a current round 10 grantee with a grant and you're spending down that grant funding, we'll take into consideration, as we've done in past, sort of your spend down rate, as well as when you'd be able to, where we would project for you as a grantee to complete those funds. Based on the timeline that Strike shared with you on the screen, we don't anticipate making awards of supplemental grants until at least Q1 of calendar year 2017. So that sort of gives you sort of an ideal range of if you're looking for funding from supplemental grant pool, by that time you may want to assess by the end of this calendar year where your standing would be in round 10. Okay. Question, is it correct that all of Puerto Rico will be an MSA of extraordinary need? Not only an MSA of extraordinary need, but also any rural areas of that territory have been deemed an area of extraordinary need based on the estimates that we received from our vendor. And the second part of this question was, is this change in effect now for round 10? And the answer to that is no. This is in effect for supplemental grants moving forward. All right, some questions around the 12-month performance period. When will it begin for supplemental funds? Depending, again, on the pool of funds we have to make available, the performance period can vary by grantee or applicant at the time of our announcement. Not all may have the 12 months. Depending on the dollar amount awarded, it may be 6 months or 7 months. We really will let you know at the time we make an award. Your official performance period date will be included in your actual contractual agreement. And depending on, again, if there's additional funding that comes available, there may be one flat out 12-month period for supplemental grants at that time. But with $1.7 million to award now, right now, the performance period can vary by applicant. If you'll notice in your application, what we're asking for is a full year scope from everyone. So beginning October 1 of 2016 through September 30th, of 2017, we would like to see projections of goals that you could do up until a full 12-month period. So that will also help us in our projections of spend down and your determination of the performance period once we issue an award, what your capacity is. All right, if your agency does not receive an award, but due to the limited funds does not cover demand, would that agency be eligible for any additional funds that come available? So if there are additional funds made available to the NFMC program throughout 2017, and if you're an applicant that was awarded funding and or an applicant that was placed on the eligible grantee list, again, your spend down is taken into consideration. Compliance standing is taken into consideration for any additional subsequent awards that we may roll out to those individuals. So in the instance, if you fall short underneath your supplemental grant, it could count against you in terms of as a compliance risk criteria for additional funds that come available. Okay, so if a NeighborWorks organization has applied for funds directly, can they also be listed as a subgrantee on an HFA funding application? The answer to that question is yes. You may apply directly for funds. You also may apply under a state HFA or another intermediary. We've seen intermediaries also apply under other various intermediaries, as long as there is a separate account of your production goals that you are going to deliver directly either to NeighborWorks or directly to each one of the direct grantees. That information just must be disclosed in advance to NeighborWorks. Okay. A couple more questions that are coming in. A question about what dates will be covered for counseling activity. Example, the service provided on or after. What dates are eligible for funding of those funds? Again, in your application, we've marked the start of your performance period as of October 1, 2016, and what you have the capacity to deliver through September 30th of 2017. Again, through the issue of your grant agreement, at the earliest, you would be able to deliver a counseling session would be that October 1st, 2016 date, if that's helpful. Is this question specific about NWO's health rating status? Is there any reason why they couldn't apply as a subgrantee under another NWO? Not at all. If you are looking to subgrant as a contracted counseling entity, an NWO and an NWO going together in an application, the information that is provided in this PowerPoint as well as in our funding announcement, there are requirements related to these type of contracted counseling entity relationships. No more than 50% of whoever the direct grantee or network organization may subcontract no more than 50% of their award to another NWO or another contracted entity. But the relationship is allowed. All right, looks like we're getting down to the end. I'm not sure I understand those counselors. Subgrantee on a, maybe, well, so that means if we have to identify who we choose to work with. Okay, you're not asked, the question here is, do we have to list counselors within the subgrantees within our application? That's not in the actual application. You don't have to list individual counselors. We do ask you to let us know in aggregate the number of FTEs, the number of trained counselors, but not list individual counselors by name. The only breakdown you will do in your application where we're getting at an individual level detail is around your subgrantees, that you call out which subgrantees you're looking to partner with you in your direct application, identifying their location, as well as the, depending if they have multiple disclosures with other applicants, then you'd also be required to fill out the multiple disclosure form that went over. Okay. Oh, okay. So clarification. Okay. So the question is, counseling agencies. Only those counseling agencies we list as subgrantees on our application are eligible for funds, correct? So the answer is partly correct, yes. We want to know at your fullest capacity and up to the request that you are making in your application, yes. How many subgrantees and who are they do you plan to partner with in your application? Now, you do have the opportunity, should we make you an award at the conclusion of this competition, we make you a grant award, you can change those listed counseling agencies at that time. So you're not stuck with them. You may, depending on the funding that we make available, maybe half or a quarter of them may actually be used. So there is a process right before your grant agreement ratification where you then go back, you vet that counseling agency or subgrantee list, and you let us know which ones are active and which ones to deactivate. I hope that answers that question. All right. Leave about 30 seconds and wait for any additional comments. Looks like we've gone through them all. Okay, so it doesn't look like there are any additional questions. Let's show our participants how they can reach us. As you are completing out your application, if you need any technical assistance at all, our NFMC team is here to help. You may reach us at the following help desk line and or email, which is staffed daily by our team. So you could shoot us an email at any time if there is additional technical assistance needs that you may have as you're completing the application. And just a reminder, please send in your expression of interest letters. Hopefully I'll look at the inbox and see a few come in after this briefing is over. And November 9th, day after Election Day, 5 p.m., application closes. Please don't wait to the last minute to hit the submit button and or check errors. Get your application in as soon as possible. All right, well, we thank you all for joining us and your patience as we went through this briefing today. Again, we'll post this recording on our website for you to play back should you need it. Thank you, have a great day.